Who's that? Commander Claw. Who's bad? Commander Claw. Let's talk about one of the most popular commanders of all time. I'm guaranteeing popular commanders of all time. It's been top 10 for at least a year now, and it is 2025. Lathrill Blade of Elves. If you're interested in this commander, hit the like button and let's talk. I'm your host, Commander Claw. I'm bringing you 5 cards on my series called the Breaking Brews. Without further ado, Lathrill Blade of Elves for 2 and Golgari. 2/3 body. Elf noble legendary creature. She has menace. What does that mean? That means when you attack with her, your opponents have to have at least 2 blockers to block her. That's right, they have to have 2. If they don't have 2, she goes through with combat damage. And it says, whenever Lathrill deals combat damage to a player, create that many 1/1 green elf warrior creature tokens. Do you know what most players do with this? They build her power up so she's like a 8/8, 10/10, whatever. Power's 10, power 8, power 9, and they're creating 10, 9, 8, 1/1 green elf creature tokens on combat. Yes, that gets ugly. And guess what? They attack the player who has 1 blocker or 0 blockers. Don't let you be the opponent without a blocker or 2 blockers. And guess what? Her last ability says tap it. Tap 10 untapped elves you control. Each opponent loses 10 life and you gain 10 life. So, what you need to know about this awesome commander is she is a win con in the command zone. It is easy to go to combat. It is easy to deal combat damage. And it's easy to create that many tokens because there's more than enough equipments or enchantment auras that boost her power for you to create at least 10 elves. And guess what? When they come in on that combat phase or at the end of combat phase, you can tap them if you have an untap ability for Lathrill Blade of Elves. There's just the potential there for you to do 10 more damage or make your opponents lose 10 life, and you gain 10 life. Like there's so many possibilities. Like Seaborn Muse is an option to untap your creatures. And guess what? This tap ability can be done at instant speed. So you have flexibility, possibilities to just destroy your opponents. So let's talk about cards that work well with Lathrill Blade of Elves. Hey, thank you for clicking on the video. Let's talk. Look, to be honest with you, there's no other way to play with this commander besides Elf Ball. Elf Ball is where it's Elf Tribal. And in general, when you are mono green with elves, you are going to put a bunch of elves on the battlefield. They're going to tap a bunch of mana, and you're going to build up their power because they build up their power collectively. As for example, Marion the Nurturer and Elvish Archdruid. They essentially say whenever another elf enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Marwyn the Nurturer, tap an amount of green mana equal to Marion's power, or Elvish Archdruid for 1 and 2 green, a 2/2 elf druid. Other elf creatures you control get +1/+1. Tap it, add a green for each elf you control. So you can see they have collective synergy. So yeah, in general, that is a great team battlefield effort momentarily until a player uses a board wipe and all your elves are gone. However, what Lathrill Blade of Elves brings to the table is a way to win the game by tapping all your elves to finish off your opponent's life totals. That's why she's amazing. So I want to talk about what Golgari brings to elves in general, because elves in general are just mono green. The Golgari side, black and green, is able to bring win cons by dealing damage or making opponents lose life. You're making your opponents lose life. Losing life and dealing damage are two different things. Two different things. Let's talk about Elderfang Venom for 2 and Golgari. It's an enchantment. Attacking elves you control have death touch. Wow. It says whenever an elf you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. This is easy to do. Remember, Lathrill Blade of Elves creates a bunch of elves equal to her power for how much combat damage you've done to an opponent. Right? So whenever one of those elves die, hey, your opponents lose life and you gain a life. This is an aristocrat strategy built in. Next up, we got Shaman of the Pack. One of the most terrifying creatures ever, I promise you. For 1 in Golgari, a 3/2 body elf shaman, it says when it enters the battlefield, target opponent loses life equal to the number of elves you control. This is just an easy 3 mana spell that just drains the life of an opponent who's in the danger zone. Danger zone could be 5 life. And without even going to combat, you can just pay 3 mana and drop this shaman of the pack, and you have 5 elves in play, and all of a sudden they just lost 5 life. Win con. That's what is Golgari bringing to your elf mono green by adding black to it. Let's talk about my favorite card that you should be adding in your Lathrill Blade of Elves deck. To be honest with you, I think it's very fitting that the Lord of the Rings set for Commander, just flavor text wise, theme wise, just works well with Lathrill Blade of Elves. Elves, Lord of the Rings, swords, yada yada yada. This card is from that set. Tales of Middle Earth Commander, Galadrim Ambush. For 3 and a green, it's an instant. Create X/1/1 green elf warrior creature tokens where X is the number of attacking creatures. Prevent all combat damage that would be dealt this turn by non-elf creatures. This is literally the elf card for Ink Shield. So what makes Lathrill Blade of the Elves even more powerful is it's in green. You have the option for fog-like effects. This is a fog-like effect that creates elf warriors to give you theme synergy for your elf commander. So let's just unpack the card. Create X/1/1 green elf creatures tokens where X is the number of attacking creatures. You can do this on any player's turn, okay, including on your turn when you attack with creatures. But you wouldn't do that. You would probably use it when a player is attacking one of your opponents, and you maybe want to cut a deal and protect them. But literally, you're just using them because they might be swinging at them with 10 creatures, or they just might be swinging with 10 creatures in general, and you just prevent all that damage by those attacking creatures, and you get 10 1/1 green elves, and you prevent all that combat damage from non-elf creatures. Gross. Let's talk about cards you may have missed. So, these are just really good synergy pieces to add with your Lathrill Blade of Elves deck. Mold Divine, Reclamation for 3, black and green. It's an enchantment. Whenever a creature you control dies, you gain 1 life and draw a card. This is good. You're going to need to be able to draw cards. And usually an aristocrat strategy, whenever a creature dies or you sacrifice a creature, or a creature dies during combat, a nice payoff is drawing cards. And gaining a life, that just is just a bonus. Black doesn't gain life very well. It does, but it doesn't do it very well. Green is like 50-50 in my book. I wouldn't rely on it. But Moldavine Reclamation, it's a nice payoff because your opponents will want to wipe the board. And you will be trying to rebuild your board state quickly. Next up, we got Throne of the Godfarer, one of my favorite artifacts. For 2 mana legendary artifact, it's a reason why it's legendary, because you only want 1 copy. Well, Wizards, from the game design perspective, only want you to have 1 copy. At the beginning of your end step, each opponent loses life equal to the number of tapped creatures you control. Ooh, remember, Lathrill Blade of Elves says tap it and tap 10 elves in order for you to do 10, make your opponents lose 10 life and you gain 10 life. So heck, why not at the beginning of your end step, make them lose an additional 10 life? What are we talking about here? This is an abusive card, and it's low CMC, so you can just play this on curve, finishing out your play, your sequence. Next up, we got Banner of Kinship for 5 mana from Bloomborough. It's an artifact. It says, as this artifact enters, choose a creature type. This artifact enters with a fellowship counter on it for each creature you control of the chosen type. Creatures you control of the chosen type get +1/+1 for each fellowship counter on this artifact. This is the friendly version of Coat of Arms. If you don't know what Coat of Arms does, just Google it and just read every Reddit forum on how confusing but powerful it is. Yeah. But Banner of Kinship is the better version of it because, creatures you control get +1/+1 for each fellowship counter on this artifact. So, essentially, if you have, 5 fellowship counters on it for each creature you control of the chosen type, your creatures get +5/+5. It just stays there. For 5 mana, A very good rate just to boost the power of your creatures, and all you need to do is give them trample. Most of the time, your opponents can handle 10/10s or 7/7s. Really good card. Really good card. Thank you for watching this video on Lathrill Blade of Elves. Hopefully it brought some interesting, some new cards for you. I really wanted to introduce some Tarkir Dragonstorm cards for this awesome commander. Actually, let me know in the comment below if you want me to do another video, specifically the cards from Tarkir Dragonstorm and Aether Drift that work really well with Lathrill Blade of Elves, just to give your deck an upgrade, right? Just a tinker or smidget of information. Otherwise, thank y'all for watching. Hopefully y'all subscribe. I'm out. Commander Claw.